Hey, thanks everyone for tuning in. I'm your host, Hewitt Pagenstecher, stand-up comedian and host of Lap Basement, a weekly comedy show every Monday at the Goodfoot Lounge. I am excited to be joined by Ian Karmel. He's a stand-up comedian, writer, and host of the All Fantasy Everything podcast. He's also going to be performing his special at Revolution Hall on March 23rd. So make sure to get tickets to that. Ian, thanks so much for joining me, man. How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for having me. We're in a beautiful cedar room. The vibes are immaculate. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, this is beautiful. Shout out to Page Street Sound Lab.
Yeah,
it's good that you're in town. You told me that you got inducted into the Hall of Fame at your high school here.
Westview High School. Yeah, only the second Hall of Fame class ever, which just really, honestly, this is not me being faux humble. This speaks poorly of my high school that I've made it in this quickly, because it's been open since 1997. There's 2,500 kids in there per year. I've had a pretty good career, but we should have had an astronaut by now, or a state senator, or more professional athletes. But that's Beaverton. You know what I mean? Not a lot of professional athletes coming out of Beaverton.
Totally. Well, yeah. I mean, you've had a long career. You've done some pretty cool stuff.
It's been good. I'm not trying to be fake self-deprecating or anything like that. But I'm just surely there must be somebody more impressive than me. But apparently not. Or they are, and they declined.
Yeah, they're I don't want my name associated with this school. I put those days behind me.
They're I'm not flying back to Beaverton. I worked so hard to get out of there. So they just kept going down the list until they found somebody with positive tweets about Beaverton, Oregon.
Well, were you doing stand-up in high school, or when did you start stand-up comedy?
No, man. I was a jock. I wasn't a jock. I wasn't like a bully or an idiot or anything like that. But I think because I was such a big dude in from middle school, grade school, really. I weighed 300 pounds in middle school. I was 6 feet tall. So I just gravitated towards football because I was A, I enjoyed it. It was fun. B, it felt it was the first time I got positive feedback for being gigantic,
Yeah.
So I was oh, let me go do this. Let me play football. It felt like a calling in a lot of ways. So that kind of defined my high school experience in a lot of ways, even though that wasn't really the kind of person I was intellectually or culturally or the things I liked, So and I think that's true of a lot of people who play high school football. It's not like Varsity Blues, you know what I mean, from top to bottom. But I didn't do any performing. I loved stand-up comedy. I listened to it from an early age. I used to not be able to fall asleep without audio playing,
Yeah.
So it went from sports radio, and then when Napster, I guess I'm aging myself here. I'm 39 years old. When Napster came out, you could download all the stand-up comedy albums you could get your hands on. So I'd just throw those on and fall asleep. But it didn't occur to me that it was something you could do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know it seems abstract. You've seen people on TV do it and stuff.
Yeah.
You realize, there's open mics. You could just sign up and go out in your town.
And we didn't, I had no idea. I remember my brother took me to a show at Harvey's, which I think is still around. And
I think they're not.
Are they not around anymore?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Harvey's, they don't survive the pandemic.
Oh, they're dead. R.I.P. Yeah. John Prine and Harvey's. So he took me to a show there, the late stand-up comedy club Harvey's, before Helium was open or anything like that. And I have no idea who was even doing the show, but they're the MC and the feature were local. And I was well, how does Portland have stand-up comedians? That seemed crazy to me. Because it was before there were comedy websites, right? So How would you even know where to find how to do an open mic? There was that resource wasn't out there. So I didn't even entertain the idea of it, even though I went and had fun, and I always enjoyed making people laugh in school. I got into comedy. Long way to answer your question. I went to Portland State University. Go Vikings!
Cool.
And I took an improv class because I needed an arts credit to graduate, and I thought that would be easier than art history or shading or whatever classes they offered. And my uncle taught it, and I was okay, that'll be an easy A, right, or at least an easy C. I'll be able to get out of there. So I went in and I took the class. How much homework could there be in improv, right? Because you have to make this stuff up. Yeah. It turns out we had to read books, but within 5 minutes of being in that class, something clicked in my head, and I was oh, this is what I want to do. This is what I have to do. And I swear to God, 5 minutes into the very first class, doing warm-ups, making other people laugh, working on, like just with other people, using all these like dumb, trivial facts, and like the way my brain worked was always like fast, but never all that deep. You know what I mean? Like now that I've met like actual intelligent people, I'm like, oh, I'm not one of you, but I do know like what the German parliament is called, so I can make a dumb reference to that, and I know the capital of Vermont. So you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So I can do
thinking on your feet.
I'm pretty smart. I'm not smart, so I'm good at like thinking on my feet. And like to make what is already a long story like at least somewhat palatable, I kept doing improv, 2 levels, and then I started TAing the classes. My uncle who taught the class was like, you're good at this, and I was good at it. And I had joined like a local group, and like he was like, this is as far as you can go here at Portland State. But he's like, but the Groundlings, that's like the school down in LA. That's like where Will Ferrell came out of, and Phil Hartman came out of. And I was like, oh, that's what I want to do. So I dropped out of PSU, took my bar mitzvah money, and moved down to Los Angeles and did the first 2 levels of the Groundlings classes. And then there was a year wait to get to the writing lab after that. So I was like in LA. It was going to be a year until I got to do any more organized comedy. I didn't do stand-up at that point. And there was like an improv open mic night at UCB on like Sundays or something like that. But you were lucky if you got up. And if you did, it was only for like one scene. Then you had to go sit back down. So I was like now addicted to performing and looking at this like wasteland of not being able to do it. I was like, all right, I'm going to move back to Portland. At least there, I know I can start an improv group. I have enough resources to do that kind of thing and go and TA that class again. I can finish my degree. So I moved back to Portland. I did that. I finished my degree. I started an improv group, TA'd the class. That was going really well. And while I was doing that, this local show producer hit me up. I think her name was Coleman, and said, hey, you do stand-up, right? And I didn't, but I lied. And I was like, yeah, of course, I do stand-up. And she had a show that was like a month away or something like that. She was like, all right, great. I'm going to book you to do stand-up on this show. Because she also booked like our improv group. So I had like a month to get ready to do my very first stand-up comedy. It was at the Clinton Street Theater. And I like wrote for that entire month, just like wrote and like watched a bunch of stand-up. Still like the things I do now to get prepared for anytime I want to do material, which is just write as much as you can, watch as much as you can, perform as much as you can. I didn't do the perform thing because I couldn't, but the first 2. And then I did stand-up on that show for the very first time. And it was like, this is going to sound like bragging, but it's not. Like I went like 40 minutes the first time I ever did stand-up comedy. Because I had no idea.
That's like unheard of.
It was insane. Like I shouldn't have. No one should have let me. And it went well because the crowd had a lot of people who were rooting for me in it. And I knew how to be funny from doing so much improv that I knew how to like, at least if a joke bombed, like work my way out of it. And the amount of adrenaline you have the first time you ever do stand-up.
Yeah, you have so much like confidence. You've never bombed in your life.
Right, exactly.
Decided to do the show.
You've only ever seen people do well because that's like, because I had seen one live show at Harvey's and then everything else was like Dana Carvey's special on, Comedy Central or Eddie Izzard's special on HBO or like whatever that was. And I'm like, oh, you go up there and you do well and everything's wonderful. And so the first show like actually went well, but she booked 4 shows. And then the second one went a little less well. And then 3 and 4 were like a disaster. And I was like, oh, okay. But like I was already hooked.
Yeah.
Although for a while after that, I just stopped doing it because I didn't know where to go. Because like this person who would booked this show, she wasn't in like the stand-up scene or anything like that. She was just like, I'll have a sketch, an improv group, and a stand-up. So I did that, and then like another couple years went by before I ever tried it again. And then I'd always like had it in the back of my mind, but I went to an open mic at Tonic Lounge, and that was like my first like getting in with the scene. I remember like Gabe Dinger was there and like this guy Richie Stratton was
Nice.
there.
Oh yeah, I know Richie.
Yeah, Richie. And they were like,
and Gabe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, there's this contest that this guy Lonnie Bruin was running. This like local comedy contest. And I was like, oh, okay, that sounds fun. So I got into that contest. Started generating more stand-up, doing as many open mics as I could. And they were like, but this was still pre-Helium, but there were a bunch of mics then. There was like the one at Tonic. There was one at, oh my God, the Boiler Room. that place that sucks. What's that place that sucks? It's still around, and its main thing is that it sucks. Suki's.
Yeah. Every Tuesday. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they have comedy like on the awning outside.
I know.
So,
Yeah.
like this is our thing here.
We own this. I mean, they've been around for a long time. They certainly have the right to put it on their awning if they want to. I never liked Suki's because the entire idea behind it was that this is hard. You know, and I was
it's like you go there and it's an impossible room, but that's kind of what's fun about it. You know,
Yeah.
maybe 3 comics and a bunch of people playing pool like over on the other side of the bar.
Right. I'm glad you find that fun. I never found that fun. I was like, it's hard enough. We have to go make it like even harder. But anyway, I like did all these open mics, and then like you would get booked on little showcases here and there. And then I forget what it was called. It wasn't Portland's Funniest Person. It was before that. It was like I think it might have been called The Funniest Person in Portland. But I joined that, and, you know, around this time, that's like when I met Shane Torres and, you know, like all these other, Richard Bain, may he rest in peace, like these people like in the Portland comedy scene.
Yep.
And then like a bunch of people who like aren't even around doing stand-up anymore. And the first night of the contest was at Dante's downtown, and that's when I met one of my best friends in the entire world, Sean Jordan.
Oh, heck yeah.
Like literally the first night, there was an NBA playoff game. I was sitting at one of the tables. He was sitting at one of the tables, and we just started bullshitting about it. Later, I found out he didn't know anything about basketball, and he was just trying because he had just moved here from Sioux Falls. But that kicked off a friendship that, like, I mean, lasts until this day. And I won that contest, which was crazy. Probably because Shane Torres had to go to a wedding in Dallas, but still.
Peace out. You're like, yes, this is my chance.
Because he'd been doing it for a few years, and I was like a baby. I mean, I had done it a couple years before, but it was like a one and done kind of thing. And then I went back to like doing improv shows. And I was like, okay, like once that happened, I started gathering like momentum, and I was like, okay, I'm like pretty good at this. I got booked on other shows, and eventually like Helium Comedy Club opened. And, that when that happened, like then you got to work at a club with, no shade on Harvey's or anything, but they weren't like bringing in comedians.
Like the national touring headliners.
Right, exactly. They were bringing in very funny people oftentimes, but like not the people who you're like artistically following, not like Kyle Kinane, you know what I mean? Or like Hannibal Buress or Maria Bamford or Mark Maron or Natasha Leggero, who's the first weekend I ever worked at Helium. The second weekend they were open, I got to MC it, and I had to like call it, like at this time I was like working at the call center at Netflix too in Hillsborough, which if anyone knows about, shout out to that place, $14 an hour and health insurance for call center work. It was fantastic.
Your first gig at Netflix.
My first gig at Netflix, right? The first time I worked there, which was like a nice little circle, but yeah, man. And then you started grinding, and like you'd look at the calendar and see who's coming up, and you like knew who was like funny and who would like be fun to work with and who kind of fits your aesthetic. So because I like saw Kyle Kinane was coming, and like I want to work with him. I love his comedy. I think he's so funny, and also I think we would get along, right? Like,
yeah.
And we did get along. And then like I got to go on the road with him a little bit, and like the same with Hannibal Buress and like Matt Bronger and these people. And also they're like, hey, if you ever come down to LA, let me know. And I was like, I will do that. So I would like, you'd call them or text them or like email them, let them know you were coming down, and they would vouch for you to get on the good LA shows. And that's how like the shows they were called like Holy Fuck back then, and Meltdown, the Karmel and Jonah show. And you would do these shows, and that's like actually how I got my first manager, was from flying down to LA all the time and doing these shows down in LA. Because the managers just go to those shows. And that's like how I got repped. And that led to me doing New Faces, yada, 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 getting an agent, and everything kind of took off from there.
Nice.
That's a long way to answer your question. Sorry.
No, that's exactly what I was looking for.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is I totally forgot to address the fact that we have Jenga sitting here.
We do have Jenga sitting. We should never address it the entire day.
We just have it here and be like, why is that here?
Yeah.
So I'm going to start playing in case you want to play.
Absolutely.
This might be your first, sober game.
This is my first sober game, my first regular sized Jenga game of Jenga. So it might collapse right away. Here we go.
Yeah. So you talked about your beginning in high school when you were doing sports, and you always had an interest in sports. And what's cool is how that emerged with your interest in comedy when you started to regularly kind of collaborate with the Portland Trailblazers.
Yeah.
I noticed. Maybe doing talking ball, for instance, or doing different like skits with players and things like that. How'd you get involved with the Trailblazers?
This was also thanks to Helium Comedy Club. So there used to be there was a channel called Comcast Sports Northwest, which carried the Blazer games, and they had to produce like a whole raft of content. So they had like pregame shows, postgame shows, and they had this postgame show called Talkin' Ball.
Yeah.
Which was just like there was like a host, a former player, like a newspaper man, and then a rotating like list of guests. And they reached out to the comedy club and they were like, hey, do any of your MCs or features like basketball? And a few of us did, but I loved basketball. Like the Blazers have been a huge part of my life for my entire life. I'm from here. I love the Blazers. I love basketball in general. So when that opportunity came up, I jumped on it. And if they rotated a few of us in, but I think because, like there were people like Gabe did it a few times. I think Nathan did it, but I don't think those dudes loved basketball the way I did. Yep. They're certainly funny enough to do it, but like I was able to be super funny. And then also I could talk about like Robert Pack, you know what I mean? Or we could talk about like why Brandon Roy was amazing or whatever, they wanted to do. And it just stuck. So from there, they started bringing me back regularly, and then it became a regular part of that panel, which was huge for two reasons. A, it was on after every Blazer game, which was massive for like my profile here in Portland. I was doing that, and I was writing a column for the Portland Mercury at the time. So every week I was in the Portland Mercury. After most Blazer games, I was on like the channel. And the other reason, it like paid pretty good. So it allowed me to like sock some money. When I say pretty good, it was like $200 an episode, and I got to do like 25 of them a season, but that adds up, especially when you're like dead broke, you know what I mean? So I was able to like squirrel a little money away for the eventual move to Los Angeles, the second move to Los Angeles. But it was also just amazing because I got to sit there and like meet Jerome Kersey and, like meet like Damian Lillard eventually and LaMarcus Aldridge at the time and all these other people who are like my heroes. Heroes is a weird word because I wasn't like, I'm going to become Damian Lillard. But these people who are like, yo, I spend like days every year just watching you guys and like speculating on like, what if he leaves the team, or what if we get this guy? Like I was obsessive about it. So it was wild for me to get to do that. And it's to this day, I have a great relationship with the team. For this season, I like got to do these like videos that they play like during the game in between, during timeouts and stuff, where I like got to work with the players and joke around with them.
And one thing I saw this season too is they announced their new mascot, Douglas Spur.
Yeah, that's right.
The Sasquatch, or Bigfoot. And you like went with you found him with Blaze the
Trail Cat. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, what do you think an additional mascot adds to the Blazers, or what do you think about the new mascot launch?
I think more like merchandising and marketing opportunities. No,
makes a great stuffed animal.
Blaze is awesome. God, Jenga's hard, huh? It's already hard.
We're off to a wild start to this Jenga.
It's, I think like an extra mascot. Brass tacks, in addition to those things, like every mascot's like a different performer, which is a thing I didn't really understand until I started like doing stuff with the Blazers. Like Blaze, like the guy who plays Blaze, that's one dude, and it has been this entire time. And he's got like sort of a way he approaches mascotting. You know what I mean? Like
yeah, some mascots, they're gymnasts. Some are more just like animated performers.
And he's like, Blaze is an animated performer, but also like is like very gymnastic and athletic and all that stuff. And like, they're almost like stand-up comedians in a weird way, or I guess maybe more like clowns, but like they each have mimes. Their own. Yeah, like mimes, but they each have their own like mascot persona. So Doug's is a little bit different, and I think maybe geared more towards kids, which is weird to say about mascots. But like, I don't know. We had a Bigfoot mascot in the 80s.
So it's like reviving that.
So it's like kind of reviving that thing. Yeah. Funny story. They like when these little teaser videos were coming out for the Bigfoot mascot. Somebody hit me up in my DMs, or no, like on my phone. This person texted me, and were like, "Hey, can I talk to you?" And I'm not gonna say any names, but it was another comedian who'd been working with another NBA team. I won't say the NBA team. I will say it was the Lakers, with the Lakers to unveil their own Bigfoot mascot.
Oh, no. Well, you guys beat him to the punch.
We beat them to the punch. Also, you're the fucking Lakers. It's Los Angeles. Nobody thinks Bigfoot is walking around Los Angeles. Harry and the Hendersons on the Universal set, maybe. You know what I mean? But like, nobody thinks Bigfoot is in Silver Lake.
Yeah.
You know, getting like a
Pacific Northwest.
Exactly. Bigfoot's not getting a $16 juice at Erewhon. So like, he's like, hey, I've been working on this thing for like, and I felt bad for the guy because that's a terrible feeling when you've like taken something this far down the street. And also, and then like all of a sudden another NBA team like has that thing you've been working on. And also I wasn't involved. I was just in the videos. It's not like I was like going to the Jody Allen, like we need a Bigfoot mascot. In fact, I think it came from her directly. But yeah, so that was like crazy where this team was like, they'd already like built the outfit and they were working with a mascot and like all this stuff. And then to this day, they haven't unveiled that mascot. I think because the Blazers got to it first. So chalk up another W for the Blazers on that one.
Yeah.
Because we got the Bigfoot mascot before Los Angeles could do it. And this whole time, Seattle, the Supersonics, they used to have a Bigfoot mascot. And now that team is probably going to come back. And that's going to be interesting to see if we have dueling Bigfoot mascots.
Yeah, it'll be like a battle of the Bigfoots.
I hope we have that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's cool to hear about, you writing a column in the Mercury. You
Yeah.
had kind of a long history of writing as a part of your career.
Yes.
Maybe even a book coming out potentially.
Not potentially,
Or
for
yeah,
sure.
definitely
Hopefully.
100%.
Pray to God.
But one thing, one big kind of moment in your career is starting to write for the Late Late Show
Yes.
with James Corden. How did that come to be?
I was.
And I shouldn't say starting to write. You were the lead writer and the co-lead writer.
I didn't start as the head writer, so I did start to write there. My first job when I got to LA. So I did what's called the New Faces at Just for Laughs Montreal, which is like a big comedy festival in Montreal.
Yep, one of the biggest.
Which is like, and to be a new face is kind of like the way I see it is like an NBA. You're like in the NBA draft as a stand-up comedian, right? So you're like part of this group of like 30 comedians. There's 15 repped, 15 unrepped, and now they do characters as well, which is awesome for like sketch and improv performers and forward-facing Instagram performers. That like, so you go there, and that's where I got my agent, and that's where I met like the talent booker who now books The Tonight Show, but at the time he was booking Chelsea Lately.
Yep.
And he was like, "Oh, you're moving to LA." And at that point, I like announced I was leaving Portland. I was moving to LA. I figured once I got New Faces, it was time to go. And also, stand-up comedy was much less about like Instagram and TikTok followers then, and more about like go down, get in front of the industry, see what they can do with you.
Like where you're located.
Right. It's where you're located was like very, very important to a way, in a way that I don't think it is as important now for stand-up specifically. For writing, all that other stuff, it's still very important. But like at that point, as a stand-up, you're like, you have to go to be down there. You're not going to like get Conan from Portland. You're not going to do XYZ from Portland. So this booker saw me at Montreal, the dude who booked the Chelsea Lately. He was like, come do that show. I went and did the show a few days after I moved. Actually, a few days before I moved to LA. I think I flew down and did my first Chelsea Lately. It went really, really well. And they asked me to come in for a job interview. And they were like, here's what like the writer's packet's going to look like. Just write a bunch of jokes. And I went in for the job interview. And I walked into a room and like Chelsea Handler and the two executive producers were sitting in there. I didn't think Chelsea was going to be in there. I had just moved to LA. I didn't have nice clothes, so I was wearing like cargo shorts and a like a short sleeve button up. And they were grilling me about it. And I think I made them laugh about that enough that like I left and they were like, that was great. And I was like, was it? And then, a few hours later, I got a call offering me the job of being a writer / panelist. So like the writers on that show were also on the panel. So it was like she would go out and do a mono, and then there was like a panel where 2 segments where you talk about like news stories and just get jokes off one by one, and then she talked to a celebrity. So they offered me a job. So 3 days after I moved to LA, which is like, this never happens. I was very, very lucky. I was good and had put myself in a good position, and then also just incredibly lucky. I had a job in LA. But at this point, Chelsea was like, I think she would admit this herself, was like sort of disenchanted with that show and wanted to, oh, there we go. wanted to move on and try other things. So it was the last year of that show, which is actually kind of perfect for me.
Yeah.
Because, you could make mistakes. You could pitch crazy ideas. It was a safe and like they weren't going to fire me and hire another writer with like a year left. I was the last new writer they ever hired. And I was a kid, relatively to the other writers. So it was a great like environment for me to learn in and make mistakes. I was also lucky with Talkin' Ball was like a great environment for me to get reps, like being on camera over and over again on like a live television.
Yep.
So that show ended after a year. I was a free agent for like 2 or 3 months. I did a pilot, like I wrote and starred in a pilot for ABC in that time, which was really fun. Tried to sell some other shows, toured a little bit doing stand-up. And then my agent hit me up and was like, hey, this new guy, James Corden, is taking over the Late Late Show. We want to set up a meeting for the two of you. And, he writes some ideas. All they want is like 10 ideas for the show. And I was like, all right, great. Like I worked in late night a little bit with Chelsea. This guy like doesn't come from stand-up. He's like a theater performer. I didn't really know anything about him, frankly. I'd never seen anything he'd ever done because I wasn't like, I just didn't know who he was.
I wasn't following him.
I didn't follow unless you watched like Gavin and Stacey, unless you were like a big British television, lover, or had somehow been to Broadway to see One Man, Two Governors, which you won the Tony for. And I hadn't seen any of that shit, like that wasn't my kind of thing. So I met with him at the Soho House, of course, like up in the like back corner. Nobody was there. He was sitting at the table. I went and sat down. It was only supposed to be like a 45-minute interview. And he and I ended up talking for 2 hours.
Wait, whose turn in Jenga is it, by the way? All right, your turn.
I've had my eye on this one for a minute.
Nice.
Oh, no.
Well, it's super awesome that you were able to collaborate with your sister on a project like this.
No! Oh, Jenga.
Jenga.
What do I have to do? Do I die? Do you shoot me? What happened?
Well, actually, we're gonna cut the interview right there. No, I'm kidding. No, no. I think
You're gonna bleep out all my.
I get I just get the dub. I can slowly set this back up.
God damn.
But yeah, no, good Jenga game. Anyway, I'm looking forward to your book coming out.
Thank you.
June 11th. It's really cool that you're able to collaborate with your sister on a piece of literature like that. That's entertaining and informative.
Yeah, I'm hoping people like it. June 11th, we'll be doing an event at Powell's on June 8th. And then also pre-orders help tremendously. The more pre-orders we get, the more money the publisher puts into marketing it, weirdly. But yeah, so if that sounds like a book for you, you can pre-order it anywhere. I'm not supposed to highlight any of them, but there's the Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all those places, but also bookshop.org, which you can order it through your local bookshop, and the money will go to your local bookshop. You can get it from Powell's,
Nice.
A lot of those places, and of course Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Yeah.
Awesome. And another thing you have coming up is you're recording your second album, first special.
Yes.
At Revolution Hall, March 23rd. How does it feel recording your first special in the city where you started comedy?
That part feels amazing. That is, I mean, like I just I love Portland so much. I think like I don't know. I just like I've done stand-up all over the place. I enjoy doing stand-up all over the place. I'm such a product of this city and of our comedy scene that it wouldn't have felt right to do it anywhere else. I love Revolution Hall. I've performed there, the last 3 or 4 times I've been to Portland. So I know those people. I know that space. I really love it. They do a great job over there. And yeah, man, I just like this. There's not a street like in what I call the Portlandia Square, you know what I mean? Which is like inside 82nd and then maybe from like Burnside to, I don't know, like Powell or whatever. And then the river, like that Southeast corridor kind of thing, which is like where I grew up as an adult. I grew up in Beaverton, but once I was an adult, like that's where I lived. Like there's not a corner that doesn't like have memories for me or like experiences or like, oh, I was at that bar with Shane and Sean one night, or there used to be a show at that place that, like was so much fun for a while. And it's just a very, very important, meaningful city for me. So to be able to do, with the book, like our our first event, at Powell's, even like before it's technically out. That means so much to me. Being able to do the special at Revolution Hall means so much to me. This place has had my back. I wouldn't be anywhere near as successful as I am, which is not even all that successful, without Portland and the people here. My family and friends, of course, but just like this city supporting me. So part of it is me wanting to give that gift back to Portland. That's about 10% of it. And the other 90% is me relying on Portland to have my back again. So there's actually people at my comedy taping. So really, I'm exploiting all of the city's goodwill.
Yeah, well, we got your back. We're happy to support. And you've sold out one of the shows. You started another show. Are you going to be taping at both of them?
Taping at both of them. Yeah, you got to have 2 bites of the apple. Nice. So hopefully the first one will go swimmingly, and then for the second one I can just have fun and try some stuff. But definitely going to be taping at both of them. And yeah, have a couple chances at it. You're from Portland?
I am born and raised.
Yeah. We're like
I went to Lincoln High School.
Yeah,
too. I know we both went to Southern Oregon or
Southern Oregon. I went to Southern for a year before I went to Portland State. It's rare, man. That are there still very few comedians who are actually from Portland in the scene right now?
Yeah, I mean, just people in general from Portland. They're normally transplants.
Yeah, mostly.
I know, people who are born and raised here, they call unicorns sometimes.
Yeah. Dude, it was so weird. Like when we started, I was the only, Gabe Dinger is from Portland, and then, but Shane wasn't, Sean wasn't, Funches wasn't, when Amy Miller moved up here, again, she moved up here, wasn't, it was crazy to actually be from Portland. And then when I wrote Portland as fuck for the Mercury, people gave me shit for being from Beaverton, but they were from Cleveland. It was so weird. I'm I'm from 7 miles to the west. That's not, you're from fucking Ohio. What are you talking about?
Yeah, they're you're not from Portland, you're from Beaverton.
Yeah, I'm okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, go Browns.
Also, one of the best shows in Portland, I think, to this day is Dough.
Oh, yeah.
Mississippi Pizza. Did you have anything to do with the starting of that show?
Dude, no, I wish.
Yeah.
I wish I did. I had my hands in some fundamental Portland comedy scene things, but most of them aren't around anymore. There used to be a theater called the Brody Theater, and I hosted an open mic and a show there for a few years. And then we had a show called Funny Over Everything, where it was me, Sean, and Shane brought comedians in who, for whatever reason, Helium wasn't booking.
Yep.
But we brought it, Nate Bargatze did our show. Moshe Kasher, we brought in, I'm forgetting so many people. Sean's going to kill me. But we brought in amazing stand-up comedians into Portland at that show, which was kind of what he's doing now at High Note, actually.
Nice.
But no, I wish, dude. Dough is fantastic. Your show is amazing too, by the way. If we can turn it around for a second, I have no idea how you've done that. I used to live on 22nd and Ash, so I lived right down the street from the Goodfoot where you do the show now, and we would always walk by that place.
Yeah.
It never occurred to any of us to do a show there, and every time, I've only been to your show, I think twice as a comedian, and then I think I went and watched somebody else do a set one time. It's packed. The audience is fantastic. You do such a great job of not only filling it up, but filling it up with the right people. Last show, there was one table full of drunk assholes who wouldn't stop talking, but that happens
there's bound to be.
There's bound to be.
Yeah.
But even they, for me, and I think for most of the comedians, didn't disrupt the show because the rest of the crowd was so good that even these 3 chatty dickheads didn't disrupt the thing. So I just as one of the, I'm not even an original Portland comedy because there's Susan Rice and you know what I mean? Augie Smith and these people who came before me, Dwight Slade.
Yep.
But as one of the people who came after that, I just want to thank you for picking up that torch and carrying it on and making sure that there's such great, better than we ever did, amazing local shows that people in other cities talk about and that local comedians can go and do. So, I mean, it's just amazing. It's super impressive what you do.
Thank you so
wonderful
much
for the scene.
That means a lot. Yeah. On the Goodfoot's been an amazing venue. I feel like it's perfect for comedy.
Yeah.
It's the basement, low ceilings vibe.
Oh, it's ideal, man. It's perfect.
The perfect storm of the location being good, the venue being known. I just try to book a kind of a diverse and really hilarious lineup every time.
You did a great job there too. It was all sorts of different kinds of comedians. It was awesome. Yeah.
No, I appreciate it. And then every time, you come in, it's awesome to have you. So you're welcome back.
Well, that's why I said that. So to sort of grease the skids a little bit. Yeah. No, I'm just, no, even if you were like Ian Karmel's band, like I would still say that, man. It's just like, it's so stupid, but you worry, that you put in all this work and time. Like, and we did for yourself, but like there was a very like for the scene aesthetic, which I think is also pretty Portlandy. When we were like starting up as comedians and like doing that, we're like, we want to build up the scene. We want to build something that lasts. And like, I don't think we did that. It's because like, that just can't happen. It's a moment, it's people. And then you move on. And then it's up to that next group to create their own thing. And it just is so rad that you specifically in your cohort in general, like have actually done that. And it's just like, I don't know, man. It just makes me, as I'm getting older and like, more emotional. It just makes me very, very happy that that's happening.
Like, I'm stoked to be starting my stand-up career in Portland. It's a thriving city, a lot of hilarious people here, and a lot of great shows. I'm stoked to be a part of it. It's super surreal.
And you need to get even more successful so you can end up in Lincoln's Hall of Fame eventually.
Yes, yeah. In their new building. I don't want to be in that building. I was never in that building. They rebuilt it.
Oh, they rebuilt it? Oh, that's right. Yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
We'll put a plaque where it used to be.
Yeah.
Lincoln's got like impressive alumni though, right? Westview doesn't. Lincoln doesn't like Matt Groening went there.
Yeah, Matt Groening. He's our big guy from The Simpsons.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. So pretty awesome. So, I got some big shoes to fill.
That's right.
But I'm also curious, as maybe some of our listeners are, who might be into like entertainment. Maybe they want to try writing, podcasting, comedy. What advice do you have for people that are just like trying to like, build a career or just a life in entertainment?
So stand-up comedy, I said it earlier, it's true. Like it is the advice I give to every single person because it's basic, but it's so true. Watch as much as you can, write as much as you can, and perform as much as you can. And those are the only three things that like you need to do to get good at the art of it, at the actual. And also don't be afraid of your influences at first. Like when I first started, if I was watching a lot of Pete Holmes, I sounded like Pete Holmes, right? Or if I was watching a lot of Matt Bronger, I sounded like Matt Bronger. And those influences were like pretty clear in my comedy. But the longer you do that, those influences combine with who you are and your voice, and they sort of help dry out your voice and what you want to talk about. And it all gets sanded together, and like, it has always been thus. Like, I'm sure Pete Holmes sounded like Christian Finnegan to him sometimes. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, and you can't avoid those. So don't be afraid of that. And don't be intimidated by that, but just keep going. And like, seriously, watch as much as you can. You learn so much just from watching people do stand-up comedy. So that's like the basic stand-up advice. And now I think more than ever is like, make your own shit. Like what we're doing right now, you're videotaping this podcast. Like, don't wait for permission from the industry. And I think more and more people are doing that. And I say that from someone who's worked in the industry for like the last decade and for the last 5 years of it in like a hiring position, right? So we took packets and we did a lot of that like hiring from packets and stuff. But for every one person we hired, there were like 200, 300, 400 packets of people who we didn't hire. And there were a lot of really funny people who've gone in to be very successful from those people we didn't hire. It just wasn't the right fit for that job in that moment. But what separated those people who we didn't hire, who are now doing amazing things, is they like took the L in stride to the extent that it even was an L. You know what I mean? And they were like, all right, fine. I got a Twitch show. I'm doing this Instagram thing. Like I'm not waiting for permission from gatekeepers. I'm going to seek out a different group of gatekeepers, you know what I mean? Yeah. And try my luck with them. I think of this career as like a big fucking tower, and it's got some windows on it and it's got a door on it and maybe there's like a garbage chute, and like you can try the door. Okay, that doesn't work. I try to climb in this window. Oh, I fell off. Let me go through the garbage chute. Oh shit, I got in through the garbage chute. And once you're on the inside, you can open those other doors, right?
Like you're planning a heist.
Well, you're planning a heist, yeah. But once you're inside the tower, it's like, oh, it's a lot easier to, if you're a successful stand-up, it's a lot easier to get your agent to submit you for a show. If you're a successful writer, it can be easier for you to make a transition into trying to do stand-up comedy if you haven't done that thing. So, I think it's good to be a multi-hyphenate, at least for me it was, and like, whatever door it is that you kick down to get inside the industry, once you're in there and people know who you are and they know you're good, then it's easier to kind of do that other stuff. So what's worked for me, and I think maybe this isn't universal advice, but it's just like try to, express yourself as many ways as you can. And once you're catch on in one of those ways, it's a little easier to open some of those other doors that you want to try. Michael Keaton was a stand-up comedian, but the dude clearly wanted to act,
Then became Batman.
Yeah, and he became Batman. So like, there's a lot of different ways to like break in. So don't be afraid of doing that. But like, and what this generation is doing so much better than mine did, we were like afraid of it, but also we didn't have all the tools, is like make your own shit, post it. The one caveat I would say to that is like, make sure your shit's good too. Like work on that, the art of it as much as you work on the Alex Falcone, wonderful Portland stand-up comedian, always used to talk about like, the movie Hustle and Flow.
Yeah.
Where it's like some comedians are hustle comedians and some are flow comedians. And you can get to 100 with like 90 hustle and 10 flow, or 90, flow, 10 hustle, whatever the ratio is. Make sure you take care of that art part of it as well. Because the hustling can only like take you so far. If you figure out the algorithm and you work yourself into like 250,000 followers and you're like selling out these shows, but then they suck, people will come once, maybe twice, right? Mm-hmm. But if you figure out that hustle and then you have the goods to back it up, that's how you build. Like, that's what I'm so proud of with All Fantasy Everything, is that we've never become the, 200,000 downloads a week podcast, right?
Yeah.
But we're consistently 50. And those people fucking love us, and they come out to stand-up shows. They come out to podcast tapings. They like, if we have a guest on and they have like, they're promoting a book, they'll buy that book because they're into it. They're like really, really, they ride with us. And I'm really proud of that because every time those people have come out, we've like delivered for them. So I think like, and the other, this is tangential to that. Sorry, I can't talk so long, dude. I'm sorry about this.
Hey, you're good.
It's not bad to ask for an opportunity if you think you're capable of killing that opportunity. That's another one. I know so many people who are afraid to ask for something because it seems like the brass ring and they're like, oh, I'm afraid to ask for that. Worst thing they can do is say no. And then if they say yes, that's the second worst thing that can happen because then you have to do it. But if you believe in yourself and you've worked hard enough to put yourself in a position to actually nail it, if you're like, I want to go to New York and I want to do Butterboy, this like really fun show, and I know somebody who can recommend me onto it, but I'm nervous to do my first show in New York, but you're here, you're killing it here, you're doing a great job, fucking ask, man. Go do it. Like, go take those lumps. No one single opportunity is as big as you think it is, for better or for worse. So if you think you're going to like people who hire people for jobs or who book shows or put together lineups, you're looking for someone, right? You're like, please,
100%.
You're like, please come in and do a good job. That would make my life so much easier. So remember that with any opportunity you're looking for, whether it's a writing job or a corporate gig or like a feature week at a stand-up comedy club, they're hoping that you come in and do a good job. So if you believe in yourself, it's not an imposition to ask at all. So I guess that would be another piece of advice.
Yeah, I love that.
Now I'll shut up.
I love the cliche quote, like, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah.
So
it's true, though. It's true. Like, you have to fucking get out there. And, like, you're going to hear no so many times. And I've almost never heard no in Portland until I left. And then I got punched in the mouth for a decade. Even with, like, the good jobs. You know what I mean? Like, I was lucky enough to have the writing jobs. But then it's like, oh, you didn't get the Comedy Central half hour. You didn't get it again. You didn't get it again. Like, oh, this pilot didn't sell. This pilot did sell. Comedy Central's not making the show. Like, you just keep getting knocked. But then it's like, oh, you won an Emmy. Oh, you got to do this stand-up on Netflix. Like, because you keep putting yourself out there in a vulnerable position, you're allowing space for wonderful things to happen because you're working hard enough to put yourself in those positions. And you've learned that getting punched in the mouth doesn't hurt that bad, And like, what really hurts is just not putting yourself out there at all. And that sounds so cliche and corny, but it really is true.
Well, I think that's amazing advice and a great note to end this interview on. Yeah. Ian, thank you so much for joining me, for playing Jenga, for telling me about your career and some advice. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me. This has been wonderful.
Yeah. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. Make sure to check out Ian's book and upcoming comedy special. Have a good day.
No! Oh, Jenga.
Jenga.
What do I have to do? Do I die? Do you shoot me? What happened?
Well, actually, we're going to cut the interview right there. No, I'm kidding. No.